Good evening, welcome. My name is Gloria Runyon, and this is Sylvia Taylor. We will present a brief overview of the historic African-American community in Vienna. This project was done initially in 2017 in celebration of the 150th anniversary of the First Baptist Church of Vienna. Since then, we have conducted tours for these sites with the Vienna Parks and Recreation Department, as well as other groups. Sylvia and I are both long-term residents of Vienna. I'm a lifelong member of the Vienna community with ancestors going back 8 generations. I am a Thomas, a Taylor, a Brown, a Carter, a Mills, and a Neal. Here are photos of some of my ancestors. This is my great-grandfather, George Brown, and his wife, my great-grandmother, Sarah Ellen Mills Brown. Beside them are my grandparents, Horeen Brown Taylor Raleigh, and her husband, William Beverly Taylor. They were buried in the cemeteries you hear more about later. From the mid-1800s through 1950s and 60s, Vienna had a large Black population. This included places such as Malcolm Road, Orchard Street, West Street, Nutley Streets, part of Courthouse Road, and Sutton Road, which was called Five Oaks at that time. And other areas in Vienna include the current location of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Tyson's Corner, Flint Hill, even Seven Corners. The Black community socialized together, worked together, played together, and prayed together. The majority of their social interactions happened through the church. In fact, in August of 1913, the Washington Bee, a newspaper for and by the African-American community in DC and surrounding areas, published an article about a social outing at the First Baptist Church in Vienna. Some of the names mentioned in that article you will hear about later. On Thursday, August the 28th, the annual picnic of the First Baptist Sunday School took place in a grove near Five Oaks, Vienna, Virginia. This was one of the most delightful occasions of the season. Superintendent W.H. Neal, with his fine corps of teachers, led a large gathering of parents, friends, and pupils of his Sunday school early in the forenoon from the church to the picnic grounds 1.5 miles away. The teacher of the advanced class, Mr. William Carter, with his working committee, of which Master Arthur Thomas was the chairman, worked hard for success. Mrs. Willie Boyd and Augustus Boone of Washington, D.C., spent Sunday with their friend, Mr. Andrew Minor, Jr. The committee of ladies who had charge of the refreshments, among whom may be names Mesdames Adela West, Rosa Dean, and Bertha Payne, Mrs. William Carter, and Mrs. J. Henderson, and others, most tastefully arranged the tables and served everybody in the highest satisfactory way. And the young folks, how they did enjoy this happy opportunity. Racing and swinging, ball playing, and whatever amusement these young people, full of life and fun, could think of, became the order of the day. There were refreshments in abundance, and all were given good service. The day closed without a single act to mar the good spirit of the occasion. And now we hear more about the churches from Sylvia.
Good evening. I'm Sylvia Taylor, and I'm very happy to share this presentation with Gloria. Tonight, we will highlight 11 historic African-American sites in Vienna. Let's begin with the original site of First Baptist Church of Vienna. This slide that you're seeing shows you on the left the original building, which is still a familiar landmark in Vienna. I'm sure you recognize it as the Knights of Columbus Santa Maria Council at 214 Lawyers Road Northwest. First Baptist Church of Vienna was founded here in 1867. It is the first and the oldest church in Vienna. It was built on property that was deeded to the trustees of First Baptist for the sum of $1 by Major O.H. Hine, who had served in the Union Army. He later became Vienna's first mayor. With the efforts of Major Hine and with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau, the first trustees, George Mack Brown, Daniel West, and Edward Harris, succeeded in acquiring lumber from a Civil War barracks which was being demolished. This building served as a school, a church, and community assembling place for colored people. And I would like to explain that the word colored will be used because it was a descriptor of the times. To function as a school during the week, boards were attached to the back of the benches and were used as desks for the children. Then, for Sunday services, the boards were removed. The church continued its dual role as a school until 1890, when the town of Vienna was incorporated. The town built a one-room Vienna colored school at the corner of Lawyers Road and Malcolm Road Northwest. The children then went to that school. In addition to being the first church built in Vienna, it is believed to be one of the first colored elementary schools in Fairfax County. In December 1957, after 90 years, the church relocated to a new edifice at 450 Orchard Street Northwest. That church is shown in the middle of the slide. The cornerstone laying for a new building was a historic occasion for members and friends of the church. A stipulation in the original deed stated that when the first building ceased to be used as a church or school, the deed would then become null and void, and the land would revert to the heirs of O.E. Hine. After vacating, the building was later sold to the Knights of Columbus. About 38 years later, extensive renovation and new construction of the building was implemented. In February 1995, the congregation temporarily moved its church services to Louise Archer School for about a year while construction of the new church building took place. On April 14, 1996, the congregation of First Baptist Church of Vienna dedicated a beautifully redesigned and renovated edifice. At the bottom of the slide is a circular image that was created to show all three buildings. The renovated church is the one in the front. At the top right is the stained glass window that is seen from inside the sanctuary. And now we have a slide of the current church, which is now celebrating its 153rd anniversary. Now we will move to the next church, which is Union Baptist Church at 205 Pleasant Street, Southwest. It was the second church for colored people in Vienna and was organized in 1902 under the leadership of Andrew W. Minor, a man of color who donated land and built the church on its present site after some of the members separated from First Baptist Church of Vienna. On October 27, 2001, the Union Baptist Church of Vienna and the congregation of the New Hope Baptist Church of Falls Church united during a meeting of both memberships. These two fellowships bonded together and merged to become one church. The name was changed to New Union Baptist Church. Now I'm passing the baton to Gloria who will now highlight two of our cemeteries.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'll first talk about the Sons and Daughters Cemetery located on Orchard Street. The historic plaque at the entrance to the cemetery reads, "During the Civil War, Harmon L. Salisbury, captain in the Union Army, commanded Company D, 26th Regiment of the Colored Infantry Troops. At war's end, Salisbury purchased many acres of land in the Vienna area. He divided the land into small lots and sold them to former enslaved people and free Black men for a small amount of money over a long period of time. On March 15th, 1892, Captain Salisbury and his wife, Susanna, sold the land on which the cemetery sits to Andrew Miner, William Conway, and Silas Borges. They were the trustees for the United Order of the Sons and Daughters of Liberty Lodge Number 9. This cemetery was established by the lodge in 1892 and is still currently in use. There are over 200 graves here. Many are the former enslaved, free colored citizens and their descendants. The earliest known grave is that of trustee Andrew Miner's infant son, buried in 1892. Many of the early grave sites are unmarked. Douglas Brown, who happens to be my great uncle, the sole surviving trustee of the Sons and Daughters Lodge, transferred ownership of the cemetery before he passed to the First Baptist Church of Vienna on December the 6th, 1986. Due to the efforts of Ted Thomas, Maud Robinson, and Historic Vienna Incorporated, the cemetery was designated a historic site with a historic marker. And we'll see that there, the entrance to the cemetery and the information that I just read. The next cemetery is the West End Cemetery, located on Lewis Street. This is a marker, historic marker on this cemetery, as also it's used on other historic places in Vienna, which you will see later. This cemetery is on land once owned by Captain Salisbury in the subdivision known as Wendover Heights. The cemetery has been known over the years as the Borges, the North-South, the Lewis Street, and the Wendover Cemetery. It was named West End Cemetery in 1986 when restoration was being planned by Historic Vienna Incorporated. After the restoration, over 250 people attended a dedication ceremony at the cemetery on April the 26th, 1987. The cemetery contains 47 gravestones plus other stone markers. And we believe that there are many other grave sites there that are unmarked, and we hopefully will find that out in the near future. The earliest date at the cemetery was 1884. The most recent was 1978. The marker reads, Historic Vienna Incorporated dedicates this marker to Captain Harmon L. Salisbury, who granted this land on February the 25th, 1884, for use as a cemetery by colored people, 1986. This was done through the efforts again of Theodore Thomas, a Vienna African-American historian, and my uncle, Maud Robinson, and who was the wife of the former mayor, Charlie Robinson. Okay, the next slide, we'll talk about the schools. Sylvia.
Yes. And now we're going to feature a school in Vienna, which is the Louise Archer School at 324 Nutley Street Northwest, formerly called the Vienna Colored School, which was built in 1939 as a three-room school under the leadership of Principal Mrs. Louise Reeves Archer, who had been principal of the Vienna Colored School at Malcolm and Lawyers Road Northwest since 1922. Mrs. Archer spearheaded the need for a larger school, and when it was constructed, the new school relocated at its current location. On this slide, you will see the Vienna Colored School on the left and a portrait of Mrs. Archer on the right. The school and the layout of the school is a drawing. The room in the front was a classroom of Mrs. Cheney Henderson, who taught the first and second grades. Behind this room were the two other classrooms. Mrs. Archer's 5th through 7th grade classroom was on the left, and Mrs. Mabel Mack's 3rd and 4th grade classroom was on the right. The floor plan shows that there was a sliding partition between Mrs. Archer's and Mrs. Mack's room, which, when pulled back, allowed for assembly programs. After Mrs. Archer's death in April 1948, parents and students petitioned the school board to rename the school in honor of Mrs. Archer, the beloved first principal and teacher for 26 years. The name was officially changed to Louise Archer School. A dedication took place in 1950. Mrs. Archer was a visionary pioneer who tirelessly pursued excellence in the education of her students. Mrs. Mack served briefly as interim principal following Mrs. Archer's death. And now you are looking at a picture of Mr. B. Oswald Robinson, who was appointed the next principal in May 1948 and served as principal for 22 years until his retirement in 1970. For the first 5 years, he was both principal and 6th grade and 7th grade teacher. When he became principal, the first renovation of the building was already underway and was completed. During his years at the school, the building was further enlarged. 3 more additions took place in 1951, 1956, and 1959. In 1965, the school became integrated, so it was no longer an all-Black elementary school or an all-colored elementary school. Under Mr. Robinson's leadership, more classrooms were added, including plans for greater expansion in 1971. If you look at the slide on the right, you will notice the contrast between both that drawing with the rooms that were expanded from 1948 through 1971 and the original school that was built in 1939. You will notice that there is a color coding in the floor plan. The rooms in green represent the original building in 1939. The rooms in blue represent the expansion that was planned by Mrs. Archer before her death and was completed in 1948 under Mr. Robinson. And as an aside, before we go on, I want to mention that I have many fond memories of teaching general music and chorus in the music room that is on the far right of the building during the years of 1981 through 2000. Continuing on with the floor plan, the rooms in orange represent the expansion from 1951 through 1959. The rooms in white represent the expansion completed in 1971 that was planned by Mr. Robinson before he retired in 1970. Louise Archer School has the distinction of being the only colored elementary school in Fairfax County that is still in use as an elementary school. The locations of Louise Archer and First Baptist Church of Vienna, which house the first colored school in Vienna, have come full circle as the school and the church are now neighbors. And so now let's look at a site that is very close to Louise Archer, and you're looking currently at the way the building looks now. But we're now going to move to a park that's just down the street from Louise Archer School. It is the Sarah Mercer Park at the corner of Nutley Street and Knowles Street Northwest. This beautiful floral park, built in 2006, honors the late Sarah Walker Mercer, a beloved neighborhood figure who was often considered the mother of the neighborhood. She was a longtime faithful member of First Baptist Church of Vienna and also the head custodian at Louise Archer School for many years. On the second slide, through the efforts of her neighbors and Malcolm Wendover Heights Civic Association, the park was designed and named in her honor and presented to the Vienna Town Council for approval. It is built next to her home, which is on Knowles Street. This slide shows the features of the park, or at least some of the features of the park, which include flowering trees, a walking path, benches, and a free lending library that was added later. The next slide shows the engraving on the memorial plaque, which says, Sarah Walker Mercer, April 21st, 1926 to February 15, 1995, a native of Vienna and a pillar of her community. Sarah was a kind-hearted woman who possessed great wisdom. She taught about human dignity during her lifetime. One of her favorite sayings was, every shut-eye isn't asleep, and every goodbye isn't gone. Also planted in this park is a memorial tree and a plaque to honor Maxine Shelley Turner, a student at Louise Archer, a graduate of Madison High School and a senior at Virginia Tech, who sadly was one of the victims in the Virginia Tech shooting tragedy in 2007. Her family and friends have continued a living memorial in her honor with the beautiful flowers and the tree that is planted near that plaque. In addition to what you saw on the last slide, there are also many other types of trees and seasonal flowers that you did not see. And we hope that you will take the time to enjoy the park during the various seasons, and that you will be very uplifted by what you see there. And so Gloria will take us now to another park.
The next park is Peterson Lane Park, located at Malcolm Road Northwest. It is named for Ting Peterson, father of Joe Peterson, an African-American resident whose house was next to the park. Actually, it sits where the current house is now. The park was the location of a vibrant community of 6 to 7 African-American families whose homes stretched to Corsica Street. As a child, I remember walking through the woods behind those houses to Corsica to visit friends. Today, the park is a neighborhood activity center that has walking trails. We could show the slide of the trails. A pickup basketball court, a playground area, a soccer area. Next slide, please. And the Gaga pit. Now, Gaga is a form of dodgeball played with 2 opponents, whose object of the game is to hit your opponent below the knees. It is played in a hexagonal pit, as this one is here. This pit was made by Girl Scouts from Flint Hill Elementary School. It's a fun game to play. You might want to try it. And behind the Gaga pit, you see a playground. And next to that is the parking area. In the next slide, you'll see the playground in the back and the Gaga pit again. And the next slide is another landmark, and that is the Carter Glenn's baptismal and ceremonial stone marker at the corner of Courthouse Road and Moorfield Street in Southwest Vienna. This baptismal marker reads, "Near this site, where Hunter's Branch crosses the property, the First Baptist Church of Vienna regularly held baptismal services and ceremonies from 1923 until 1952. This property, now known as Carter's Glen, was the homestead of Charles Carter, grandson of a freed slave, and his descendants. This plaque was erected to commemorate this historic site on November 1995 by Historic Vienna Incorporated, the First Baptist Church of Vienna, and John P. Sekas. Charles Carter is buried in the West End Cemetery." And just as an aside, when I was a child, this was an active farm, and I loved walking by this area because there were cows and chickens, and it was a lot of fun to see them there. So I'm really pleased that this pool is now, where the baptismal took place, is now historic marker. And next we'll go to the homes that we'd like to show you, homes and families. The first home is a Taylor house located at 214 Nutley Street. In 1907, the deed to this house from H.L. Salisbury to Gilmore Taylor was signed. Gilmore Taylor happens to be, excuse me, my great-grandfather. His grave is located in the West End Cemetery. And this house is one of the best examples. Oh, here you see a picture of Gilmore Taylor and his wife, Ascenda, and my grandfather, William Beverly Taylor. Now, this house is one of the best examples left in Vienna of a home owned by a free man and his family. The ownership shifted from Gilmore Taylor and his wife to his son, Bentley, also known as Bunny Taylor, and his wife, Alice. It was commonly known as Aunt Alice's house until 1978. After a series of owners, it was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Edward Malliot in 1995, who registered it as an historic home in 2009. Descendants of Mr. and Mrs. Gilmore Taylor still reside in Vienna. As I said, I'm one of them. If you look at the historic, the marker there, if we could point to that by the wreath on the house, that marker is on the house, and you may see it when you go by because you see where the light is. The marker is just under that light. Thank you. The next one, Sylvia.
Yes, the next home is the Thomas Holmes House at 128 Nutley Street Northwest at the corner of Nutley Street and Wendover Avenue. This house was built in 1900, and this is the home of Carson and Mary Day Thomas. They had 5 daughters, 2 of whom were prominent members of the Vienna community. Mrs. Odessa Thomas Carter was a town clerk for the town of Vienna and the first African-American to hold this position. Her sister, Mrs. Mabel Thomas Mack, previously mentioned, was a teacher at the Vienna Colored School from 1929 through the 1950s, when the school was officially renamed Louise Archer School in 1950 in honor of Mrs. Louise Archer, the former principal. Mrs. Mack taught grades 3 and 4 during her tenure there. She also served as interim principal from April through May 1948, following the death of Mrs. Archer. The current owner of the home is Tyrone Holmes and his wife, June. Tyrone is the grandson of Mr. and Mrs. Carson Thomas and the son of the third daughter, Harriet. The extent of the Thomas Holmes property extended from Wendover Avenue to Maple Avenue, including all of the village green. This area was where the family livestock and the garden were located. Of special interest, the yard of the Holmes family is traditionally transformed into a Christmas spectacular light show representing all aspects of Christmas, which fills their entire yard. I'm sure that many of you have enjoyed seeing it during the Christmas season. But I must caution you, during that time, you must ride by the house before the lights are turned off at around 9 p.m., or else you will miss it. But it's really wonderful, and get your camera ready because you'll want to take some shots. And so Gloria will conclude our presentation with a beautiful house, which is our last location. Gloria?
Thank you, Sylvia. Now, this is the Miner home, one of my favorite places to visit as a child. It's located at 130 Pleasant Street Northwest. Andrew Miner and his wife Emma, employees of Captain Harmon Salisbury, were also well-known residents in Vienna. The house that stands at 130 Pleasant Street was built on land recorded in the deed in 1899. The next generation rebuilt and enlarged it. Miner made 2 land transactions with Salisbury before 1900. The first was 5.5 acres at Courthouse Road and Pleasant Street, extending up Pleasant toward Maple. This is in the southwest section of Vienna. His son Joseph and his wife built a home at 210 Pleasant Street. A portion of the land was sold to the trustees of the New Union Church. Joseph and his wife Mabel lived behind the church, and we lived next door to them. He was Dr. Miner, Dr. Joseph Miner. He was a chiropractor, but he was someone that we called on for all our scrapes and bruises and broken limbs. I enjoyed living next to them. Now, a bit about this Miner house. There were 2 ladies there, the daughters of Andrew Miner, Miss Lula and Miss Rosa Miner. They were very elegant and enjoyed serving you tea when you went to visit. Miss Lula would serve you tea in her own china, their china cups, and Miss Rosa would serve you cake on her china plate. So they didn't share their dishes with you, but it was still a fun place to visit. They were very elegant, and we had to sit properly and be courteous and answer questions with yes and no, never just nodding of the head or saying, and so it was fun. We learned lots of manners there, and we certainly enjoyed visiting. Thank you very much. That's the extent of our tour. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, we're open to them now, I suspect. Sylvia?
It has been my pleasure to partner with Gloria this evening to share some of the treasures of African American history in Vienna. Because both of us know the importance of our history, we research, and our purpose is to enlighten the community so that you also can know. We thank you so much for taking the time to come tonight to learn something new about our town, and also to know that there is a combined history that we have. I hope that as a result of tonight, you will choose to go and visit some of these sites and enjoy them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to also say, we mentioned Black community and colored community, but Vienna and the surrounding areas are also places where the Native Americans lived, and the families lived together and intermarried together as well. So it was a vibrant community of colored people, as Sylvia mentioned before. So thank you so much.
Yay. That's fantastic, you guys. Thank you so much. Now, we'll be taking questions. Are you guys okay with that?
We'll try our best.
This is John Vrana, and I have a question. Those houses, those are beautiful. I really particularly enjoyed that part where you highlighted the various different houses, like the red one there at the end and all. How many of those, I think there was about 3 or 4 that you showed, how many of those are still standing?
All of them.
They are all there. I heard
Yes.
the address, but I don't know the town well enough to be able to picture it and say, "Oh, I know it's there." No, that's wonderful. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
So
All right.
another,
Time to
yes,
see a
I
lot
would
of
like
those
to,
houses on the Register of Historic Places as well.
Well, one of them is.
Yes, I know that.
But yes, I think that will be another part of our project.
Right.
Would be to visit the homeowners and let them know about the register and encourage them to register their home.
We're especially interested in the Holmes property because it has such a history.
Oh, well, you could also add that the park that you showed, that's now a historic place, as well as the baptismal site. That could go on as well.
Well,
Yeah,
that's good to know because
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
sure the church would be interested in having it designated as such. Thank you for bringing that up.
that's a good point, Mike. I
Mhm.
see a question in the chat from Eileen. What happened to the houses in what is now Peterson Park? Thanks for this presentation.
Well, many of those houses have been destroyed. People have moved. Some of them moved on Nutley Street. One of the families who lived there, they're the Harrods now, who live on Nutley. Some of them moved out of Vienna. And when they left, the houses were sold and someone bought the park. I'm so pleased it was turned into a park and named after the Petersons because it was a lovely area for those 7 families to live in.
Wow.
Peterson Park could also go on the register now that we mention it.
Yeah, okay, Linnell, I see a question. Oh,
hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Hi, my name is Linnell Nail, and I really enjoyed this presentation. For one of the reasons, I think I'm related to both of the young ladies that were represented here. So I am a descendant of Robinson, Nail, and Harris family, as well as the Payne family. So I think I'm going full circle, but I really enjoyed this presentation because I am researching just found out that I have a connection to some of the families in Vienna, which are the Fry and the Payne family. So I'm learning as I go, and I really appreciate you guys for sharing it. So that's going to make my research a little bit more interesting.
Wonderful.
Good.
I see a question from Lori Jackson. Do you know Charles Carter's family name? I'm a descendant of Charles Henry Carter, date of birth 1862. I'm wondering if it's the same Charles Carter.
We have Dee Dee online. Dee Dee, you
Hi.
understand?
My grandfather, there were 2 Charles Henry Carters in Vienna. One was located out at Tyson's Corner, which they used to call Stony Hill, which was one time called Courthouse Hills. And then my grandfather, who lived down the street here at the corner of Nutley and Courthouse Road, in which we had a farm. He married Carrie Neal, who lived up at what they used to call 5 Oaks. That's where she came from. That's where the Neal family is located, in which also Gloria and I are also on a committee where we're trying to make the Neal that found a family cemetery up on Sutton Road. So we're trying to work and trying to get that solidified with the county. But the Carter family, we came from Tyson's Corner. And like Gloria said, our grandfather moved it. It wasn't called Vienna then in 1859, and he was working with what's his name, Peter Hendricks family.
Oh.
My family was from Stony Hill. I do.
Okay, then you're related to the Charles Henry Carter out at Stony Hill, which they called Old Courthouse Hills. My grandfather's name was Charles Henry Carter too. There were 2. One, your Charles Henry Carter was related to, his mother's name was Sally, and my Charles Henry Carter, his father's name was Robert.
But I think if you go back far enough,
And we're all related to Keziah Carter.
right.
We're all descendants of Keziah Carter.
I have heard that.
So
That's
we're
neat.
probably related, Lori.
There's a question from a unknown iPad. Can you tell us anything about Alfonso Williams' property on Route 123 coming into Vienna from Tyson's Corner?
Well, what do you want to know about it? Well, we know he lived there with his family.
Right.
Oh,
He married Marguerite Williams from
Right.
Vienna, who was she was the daughter of James and Mabel Ellis.
Their daughter. They have several kids.
Yeah, they had several kids. That's right, and they had a farm out there where they
Yeah.
had horses and everything. That's what
It was
I
called
remember.
Heads Hill. Is that right?
right. I used to ride horses over there.
Did you?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Sometimes one of the daughters, Sandra, comes back to visit ever so often.
yeah.
That's neat. Let's see. Let's see. There's a few more. Was the Thomas home purchased by descendants?
Yes, Tyrone and June Holmes bought that property.
They bought it, as Sylvia mentioned, they bought it from their grandmother,
Yes,
Tyrone's grandmother.
yes,
So Thomas home being the Thomas Holmes house?
Yes,
yes.
Tyrone's grandmother was, as Sylvia read, Thomas, one of the Thomas girls, and he bought it from his grandmother.
Mhm.
Okay, neat. Question from Conair, Ms. Mr. Is there a book or pamphlet available on African American sites in Vienna?
It is a work in progress. We do have it all documented, but it has not been put in a format. That is one of our to-do projects that we're moving forward with that. And we certainly will let HVI have access to it so that when it is completed, you can come to the store and get copies.
A question on that. When we go back to being able to have tours in person, either bus tours or walking tours or bicycle tours, I love that idea. Did you? I can't remember. Did you give out that sheet? The
Yes,
sheet.
I did.
Yeah. So that's,
Our tour was a van tour, or it started out as a bus tour from the church because we used the church buses. Then when the town of Vienna decided to include it in their list of activities, they used the van that the town owns. A van is much smaller. It would only hold 12 occupants, and 3 of them would include Gloria, myself, and the driver. So that meant only 9 people at a time could go. That would have continued during the spring, but because of COVID, it was canceled. But I'm sure when things open up, there's an interest in having it again. And whenever the tours were given, the riders were always given a full description that they could take with them of the information.
And sometimes we've given it for other groups as well. I just want to add something. We've done mostly Northwest Vienna, and we haven't done Southwest as much, which is mostly where the Carters lived. But as well, in doing some research with some people from Fairfax and trying to document a Neal family cemetery on Sutton Road, I discovered that that was an all-Black area as well, called 5 Oaks. And if the trolley stopped there at the corner of 5 Oaks and Courthouse Road. So eventually, Sylvia will have even more to add to our tour.
You know, this is really a work in progress. Everything, we are always learning more and more information, and it's a joy to do that. So history is still alive and well. We have found out as we have talked to people.
I think too, one thing that's really fun about an evening like this is you make new connections and find out new things.
Yes.
Just from each other at an event like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me look, I think there's another question or two. Oh yes, please offer a pamphlet of the African American history. Jimmy Linza, you're a man after my own heart. The Homes Light Show every Christmas is one of my local highlights of the season. Yes. And he earlier said, love the Carters and their farm over by where I grew up on Courthouse. Yes. Here's Mary Ann. I'm glad to learn more about Vienna. Please give the location of the Carter Baptism Spring. So
It's on the location.
It's down, if you go past Nutley Street, continue on Courthouse Road, is on the corner of
Yes,
Courthouse and Moorfield Creek Drive.
correct.
Right.
And it's very prominent. I mean, you can't go down, what is the street? Courthouse. After
Road.
you cross over Nutley, then you're not far from where that stone is. It's on the right side if you're coming from the Vienna area. And it's so prominent. It's right there on the corner. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
And there's a house right next to it as well. So that's another marker as well.
Yes, it's in a subdivision, actually.
It used to be the Carter farm. Yeah, at the corner of address is a corner of Courthouse and Moorfield.
Yeah. And the other half of that question, also, I have heard the name of Aura Lawson connected with Louise Archer's school. Is that correct?
I remember the name. I cannot tell you offhand what her relationship was, but there was some sort of relationship, and I know others I can find out.
Well, Aura Lawson
She
was
taught
not,
at Louise Archer. She was my brother's, I think, first or third grade teacher at Louise Archer.
she was my first grade teacher.
Yeah, I know she was the first or third grade teacher.
And she taught there for, probably 15 years.
Yeah, she
Quite
did.
a while.
And she
taught
was
at
a
Louise
prominent
Archer,
member of First Baptist too.
And her husband, Harold Lawson, taught at Luther Jackson High School.
Yeah.
Well, aren't you glad you asked the question? And we have people here who knew, and I'm very glad.
That's fantastic. Here's one. Are the Carters on the call associated with the church at the Cartersville community on Hunter Mill Road?
Yes, there is some relation to, if Gloria and Sylvia want to take it over, but I can tell you more than they can.
Well, then you should be the one to speak.
Okay, let me say that Dee Dee has done a lot of research on the Carter family, and I'm learning a lot from her and doing research on my own. But Dee Dee, take it away.
Okay. Yes, we are related to the Carters that pertaining to Cartersville Church. Rosa Fairfax married Jeff Carter, who is related to the Carter family out at Courthouse Hills. He is the grandson of Keziah Carter, and his mother's name was Millie. And Rosa's father, who was, I think his name was Edward Fairfax. He was the first pastor there. But yes, she married Jeff Carter, who was related to us. And he had also had 3 children. I think he had 4 or 5 children by his second wife and 4 or 5 kids by his first wife. So yes, we are related to Rosa Carter's husband, Jeff Carter, and his name is Jefferson Carter.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yes,
Well,
and my
I
great
wonder
aunt
if-
used to, both
just wonder
of my
if the
great aunts
audience-
used to teach at Cartersville Church. Carrie Carter and Janie Carter. They were teachers at Cartersville.
I was going to say, I wonder if the audience knows the relationship between Gloria and Dee Dee.
Tell.
Yeah,
I
well,
think you should let them know.
yes. Well, as I said, I gave you the names of lots of people: Thomas, Taylor, Carter, Jew. Well, Dee Dee and I are related to Carters. And when I gave you the name of my great grandmother, she was Sarah Ellen Carter Brown. So our history goes back as far as Keziah, and Keziah was a descendant of American Indian. And there's a whole history that Dee Dee and I are involved in that we're extremely excited about. But we're related because we are cousins.
Yeah, we're cousins on multiple sides. We're
Yes,
cousins
we
on
are.
the Carter side, the Brown side, and the Neal side.
How about that?
That's great. Let's see. Did the second principal of Archer School also serve as teacher and principal, as did Mrs. Archer? I think-
Yes. He served in both capacities for the first 5 years, but he was there for 22 years, and he was principal for the entire time.
He was, he taught me in 5th or 6th grade, whatever grade it was, and he was my principal, yes.
We can start to see how old you are,
I
Gloria.
know.
Do you know any information about the Fry family that lived in Vienna? Frye.
That's an old family as well. They live near the Sons and Daughters Cemetery. They've been in Vienna for a long time, as has the Jacksons. So there are several families that have been here since the 1800s, and Fry's and Jacksons are one of them. I know the Fry's because they said they live in Vienna. We went to school together.
That's neat. I'm seeing a double question from Mike Berger and me. His part is looking forward. Can you guys mention the changes coming to Louise Archer? And then my second part of that question is if Lee will eventually pull up the picture of Louise Archer as it looks today, if you'll point to us the exact old part as best as you can see it from the front, which maybe isn't very well.
Yes, it is indicated.
No, but from just show us when.
I'm getting there.
And then let's not forget Mike's part, but the picture of the facade, the one after this, Lee.
Well, yes, but you can't see. So what I'm trying to say is this is the entrance here. So, oops, didn't mean to move that. And when you see this, that tells you that's that entrance.
No, it's to the right more, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It would be that one.
that one.
So let's
The
go
far-
back.
The right is the old part of the school.
This
Yes.
one,
Yes.
right here.
And that room with the big windows where your cursor just was, that is the music room where I taught.
Okay,
And so when you showed the diagram
I'll
of
go back
that
to
room
that.
on the far right, right over here, where it says music room, I occupied that room for 19 years. So I have fond memories of my experience there. And I run into children who are now adults often.
So the other room, the other room with the big windows in front,
This one.
that's an old room.
That was this room here.
Okay. So that's an original section.
Yes, the 1939 section.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike asked about what's happening now. Is that what your other question, Mike?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Sylvia, do you want to answer that?
Well, Gloria and I and others are on a group, a board, not a board, a committee. Is the renovation committee for the expansion of Louise Archer. Right now, plans are in progress as to how they will make the school possible to accommodate more students. Everything is still on the drawing board. There have been some plans shown to the committee, and then we put our input, we gave our input, and more is being done. One thing that was brought up was the fact that Louise Archer is a historic building, and we were told that nothing that they do will diminish that fact. So that is a good thing, and they know where the original part of the building is. So I'm sure that will be preserved as much as possible. they expect that the work will be done in a few more years. I mean, completed. I don't have the information in front of me, but maybe like 2024 or something like that. By that time, everything that needs to be done. Kathy is also
Yes.
on, and she might have more to add.
I think that it was 4 years.
Mhm.
One of the reasons why you and I and Gloria were invited was that they wanted representation from Historic Vienna to make sure that the historic parts were not only intact, but also enhanced, that people knew about the history. So that's going to be incorporated into many parts of the first floor, which is really, really nice.
Mhm.
It's
And they've also invited a former Mrs. Archer, one of her students, is a part of that
Yes.
committee as well.
Yes.
right.
Washington Taylor Washington.
Right. Mhm. So there is a good representation of people in the town and staff. There are some staff members, the principal and a few others who are also part of that committee. This is not a frequently meeting group. We came to learn. Then we had another meeting to make sure to put our input into the historic element of the building. And that there've only been 2 meetings thus far, and it started in August.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Sylvia, but I wanted to let people know that that other large window area that was part of the green section, one of the really fun things that the kids love to learn about Ms. Archer was that she wanted to make sure that the children had a good meal, and there was a potbelly stove that was in that room, and they would make soup, and the kids would bring vegetables from their homes and stuff like that. And quite often they would have a very good hot meal, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
My 94-year-old aunt tells about that all the time. And she has great stories about Mrs. Archer.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Archer was an amazing woman. So
Yes, she was.
I can't wait for you to get that book out, Sylvia.
Oh, yes, we didn't even talk about how Sylvia is the author of, let me get the name right, Louise Archer, The Educator and the School. And it needs to be reprinted. And I imagine you're updating it.
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll just be nagging her for that as well.
Yes, you will.
Another question, Kathy, is this one yours? Mention the Carters started Patrick Henry Library, which was an integrated library, unlike the little library, which was segregated.
That's right.
Yes, well, that was started by William Carter, we called him, and his wife Lillian Carter. They lived on Lewis Street next to the Western Cemetery. And it was integrated because a group of people, including the Carters and Miss Lillian Blackwell and Clarence Smith and others, wanted the library to be integrated because Little Library was not. And Patrick Henry was not at the very beginning. And so these people formed a committee along with, I don't want to miss this woman's name, Martha. I want to say Pinello, I'm not sure, and forgive me for that. But they formed that committee to make sure that the library was integrated. And if you go to the library and look in the meeting room, there is a portrait of Mr. Carter and his wife.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yes, Martha Pinino. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see. There was another question. Where can I find more information about Keziah Carter from Lori Jackson?
Well, are you on, just go on ancestry.com and you'll find a lot of information about her. You can just enter her name. I did my DNA. Interesting. I'm from all over the world, but aren't we all? And so it does traces back to 17, I think the earliest I've done is 1740s. somewhere in 1742. So yeah, just go and search it on Ancestry.
And Ancestry, if you don't have a subscription, I believe the Fairfax County Public Library during COVID has been making it available off-site. It used to be you could only use it by going to the Virginia room during in person. But now I think we can use it from afar, which is a big thing because Ancestry has so much information in it. Marguerite. Oswald Robinson was my uncle. In his retirement, he was very active in preserving the Manassas battlefield from becoming a Disneyland site.
That's
Remember
quite true.
that?
And weren't they able to stay on that property until his death?
Are you still here, Marguerite?
Yes.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. My name is Miss Taylor.
Too. He had rights to stay for his life, but the rest of the family had to leave. My mother was 12 when the government took over the land, and all my other aunts and my aunt and the other uncles ended up either in Washington or in Bordentown, New Jersey, where there was a high school, a boarding high school for colored children. And one of my uncles was a teacher there. So they did scatter. The thing that was funny to me was one of my uncles who lived in Washington, Adrian Robinson, bought land in Vienna, and he had his summer home in Vienna. He lived in Washington, DC. He had his summer home in Vienna. I grew up in Philadelphia, and we would go and visit him and run around the acreage. And I look at Vienna now and all the houses where the land was. It just makes me smile. You know, your summer home in Vienna and you live in DC. It's just an interesting bit of history to me.
Yes, it is. Where I grew up on Pleasant Street Southwest, there was a neighbor. There were 3 families of color, the Miners, my family, and the Douglas family. They were teachers in Washington, D.C. Then it was called the Miners Teachers College. And they came to Vienna during the summer. And that's what they did. Just had their summer home and just at least maybe it was a ½ acre or 2 acres in Vienna.
There were many homes off of Gallows Road in the woods, big homes that were summer homes for residents of the district. We used to have a friend who lived in a very large log cabin home.
Lori, may I answer, Lori? My daughter texted me and saying, why don't we mention the Vienna book done by Mayo Stuntz? It's in the Freeman House, and it gives a lot of information about Vienna and the colored families in Vienna, and it does mention Keziah, and that's a good place to start. So thank you.
I just happen to have one here, and let me correct the record. It's by Mayo and Connie Stuntz.
That's right.
Thank you, Eve.
So, and can you spell the name for me?
Stuntz.
Anne's parents, and the book is, so this was Vienna, correct?
Thank you.
Yeah. That's great. That's a good bunch. Let's see. Was there another question? Let's have a look.
You should let them know that it's on sale at the Freeman store.
They're on the pop-up site right now.
It's only on sale. The only new copies you'll ever buy of it are at the Freeman store. You can sometimes find typically really expensive used copies online, unless you're lucky. One time I missed one at a yard sale for 10 cents. I was really mad. Okay.
They're available on the pop-up right now too.
Good. How much are they?
$30 for soft cover and a little bit more for the hard cover. You can get to that pop-up site from our website.
Thank you. Linny also says I'm related to the Robinson family as well. You guys are cousins. Pete added Martha Panino. Thank you. Linny added McKinley Robinson sold the land of Manassas battlefield to the National Park Service. And then Lee has written in the chat, the book, just so it's in front of you, the book is This Was Vienna, Virginia by Connie and Mayo Stuntz. All right, any more questions, you guys? This has been absolutely fantastic. Lee, you recorded the main presentation, right?
Well, I forgot to start it, so I recorded it halfway through.
Okay.
Sorry.
I've got some of it on my little recorder. But you guys just have to give it again and again. This was really good. I think how many were we? We were 50 some on this program today. We're down to 45. I think there's a lot of interest in this, and I think it would be. I do not believe we have many or any African American sites on our list. So I think it's well worth it, and it's not just houses. It's businesses. It's buildings, businesses, and sites. So that's quite a broad thing. That's why the location of the baptismal area is possible.
And also don't they didn't have a chance to talk about things like the Lincoln Park area and so many other places that the houses are getting torn down and sold for $1.5 million, but those neighborhoods are still there. And we've been talking about markers, making historic markers eventually too. And I know that the town is also interested when they're doing their sidewalk renovations and things like that they want to do walking tours. So there are some things that are coming. It's just so many hours in a day.
Right. Also, did you say you only went over 12 of your original 22? Maybe we need a part 2.
Well,
I'd go for that.
We discovered in doing this, as we said before, Vienna was majority people of color. Now I think there are only 2.7% African Americans in Vienna. A big difference.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that history done, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if there's no more questions or cousins to be discovered, then I think we can bring this to an end. I kind of hate for it. If this were real life, we would be eating cookies, homemade cookies, and drinking cider. So when we sign off, let's pretend we're all doing that with each other and talking till 10 while Leslie waits for us so she can lock up the building.
Don't forget membership.
This is Dee Dee. I just want everybody to know that Martha Panino was my first grade lay teacher at OLGC.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. So every time we used to talk to her, she remembered me as her student.
That's darling.
Mother Fairfax.
Kathy's mentioned, yes, if anybody, please join Historic Vienna. We love expanding our membership. We, as I said earlier, you can now do it online since we've revamped our website. And so it's so easy. Meg Lay, I'm looking at you. You are our most recent online rejoiner, right?
I did, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mention the very, very high fee that we charge for an annual membership.
Oh, what is it? Not very much. It's $30 for
Yeah, $30.
25 for a single and 30 for a family, something like that. Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's time to sign off. We did really well. We didn't stay too much past 9. So thanks all of you. It was a really nice turnout and wonderful discussion and questions. And we hope to see you again. Keep an eye out. We'll talk these ladies into doing a part 2 and 3. Next time, we can do all sorts of different things, videos. And we really appreciate it, Gloria and Sylvia. This was fantastic.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks, Gloria.
Great job.
Bye. Lots
Great
of
work.
claps for
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad you
Yes,
appreciate it.
it was our pleasure.
Okay. Good night.
Right.
Night.
Bye,
Night.
everyone.